This is the 139th episode of Decoding Fox News, and I'm your host, Juliet Jeske. Each week, I watch and analyze a whole heck of a lot of Fox News, and then break it down. I watch all the Fox News you'd never want to. Last week, it was 26 hours, plus a bunch, like about 15 hours worth of PBS. It's ha 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 ha. If you haven't listened to it yet, it's performing beyond my expectations. I'm shocked, actually. I didn't think it was going to be a hit. I thought it was going to be a dud. I just felt like I needed to do it. I felt an obligation to go through all of that coverage from Fox and PBS. And then I put it out there thinking, whatever, and bam, just off to the races. It's doing really well. So anyway, I'm not going to start with the media clip because I need to kind of explain something first. So here we go. Very briefly, due to my workload, which has been excessive, like working through weekends and the whole nine yards, I haven't been picking up anything this week. I will be doing next week's newsletter is going to be focused on Pete Hegseth and probably a couple other proposed cabinet appointments that Trump has been making, which are completely bonkers. So I'm going to be focusing on that, like going through archives rather than watching stuff this week because I can't. I'm spent. So that really doesn't give me a lot of time off, actually. I'm going to get maybe 2 days off, but it's enough. It's enough for me to get a couple days where I'm not watching Fox. Would be great. So according to the folks at Fox News, Donald J. Trump's win is proof that legacy media and identity politics are dead, while Americans are disgusted by transgender athletes and woke ideologies promoted by the far left. Greg Gutfeld called for the execution of doctors who perform gender-affirming care. Ainsley Earhardt found divine intervention in Trump's victory, and Jesse Watters laughed about mass deportations. Although some folks did express joy over the prospect of another Trump presidency, an undercurrent of rage and resentment still permeated the network. Fox News hosts and guests continued to tear into Vice President Kamala Harris, President Joe Biden, DEI policies, competing media companies, and the Democratic Party. Segments about negative reactions to Trump's win took up 17% of the airtime on the shows I've covered. Journalists and pundits were chastised for not immediately accepting and rejoicing in Trump's victory, while Biden was criticized for cordially accepting a meeting with his former rival. I'm not kidding on that one. Democrats and critics of the president-elect could do absolutely nothing right. Anyone watching Fox News exclusively last week would have missed out on stories about climate crisis in Japan, Pakistan, Spain, and Cuba, along with a murder conviction of a white former police officer of an unarmed black man. So shows I covered last week were Fox and Friends, all 3 hours the day after the election, The Five, Jesse Watters Primetime, and the election night coverage, which was epic. And very quickly, I want to address this because I've been getting a lot of correspondence since the election, and I'm overwhelmed. So I will try to get back to people when I can. It's just been a lot. It's been a lot. And people also contact me on every social media platform, which is very frustrating. I have it shut off on Facebook because I can't take more. So on Facebook, if you go to my fan page, you can't email me. And that's intentional. I'm not being a jerk. I just can't handle it. So anyway, we're going to move on to the first clip. This is a montage I created of 3 themes that we're going to hear probably for a while now. They're probably not going to let these drop very quickly. Here you go.
This whole concept of identity politics, and both sides do it, but Democrats are far worse about it.
And the whole idea of identity politics, I think, is really the story of this election. It's collapsing.
He defeated identity politics. DEI is dead.
So you live by DEI, you die by DEI.
Identity politics is dead.
The identity politics, the divisive identity politics that Democrats have relied on for years and years and years are starting to come to an end.
And I was talking to some others that are in our profession, and they said this is the end of the legacy media. You watch all of these legacy channels, all these old school journalists, they tell you how to vote. They lied about Donald Trump. They lied about all the they had all the conspiracy theories.
So I have to jump in here because I was just like, Ainsley Earhardt, what are you talking about? So I don't know if she knows where she works, but Fox doesn't exactly have the best reputation. Her employer famously paid out a $787.5 million settlement to Dominion Voting Systems for knowingly promoting false stories about the 2020 election. And Fox very much tells its voters how to vote. In fact, they did a bunch of candidate endorsements right before the election, and they were all Republicans, not a single Democrat, because that's what they do. The network also played an undisclosed settlement to the family of Seth Rich, a Democratic Party aide, after it spread and promoted false conspiracy theories about his murder. Jesse Watters promoted unsubstantiated claims about the violent attack on Paul Pelosi and a bag of cocaine found in the White House. And he even said that the world-famous pop star Taylor Swift might be a Pentagon psyop, which is an asset used for psychological operations. I'm also not sure how Fox News is not considered legacy media. Fox News is not nearly as old as the other television broadcast networks, but is not exactly new media that dominates social media platforms such as YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Substack, and podcast platforms. Like Joe Rogan is what I would call new media. I would not call Fox News new media. So on Friday, Harold Ford Jr., the moderate voice on the Five, he also says something kind of absolutely ridiculous. Here we go.
The liberal media has just been pronounced dead.
Unlike the legacy media, where everything's off limits.
Joe Rogan is more powerful in many ways in reaching voters than legacy media. I agree with the premise that legacy media has to rethink how and what they do and their importance.
So there's really basically no change in any of the polls before Trump appeared on Joe Rogan and after Trump appeared on Joe Rogan. Basically, everything's been the same for a while. So I'm not convinced that Joe Rogan, who also endorsed Bernie Sanders at one point, Bernie Sanders obviously did not win, it was the thing that pushed Trump over the edge. I think it's much bigger than that. I don't think it's one interview. I don't think it's Joe Rogan. I just don't. I'm sorry. Just my opinion. You can disagree. Anyway, we're going to move on from this whole, it's identity politics is dead, legacy media is dead, and now they're going to start talking about mandates. And I kept hearing this stuff repeated, which is why I made this into a montage. Here we go.
If he gets in this White House with a mandate to heal the country, fix the economy, and close the border.
All Americans have to realize at this point that this election was a clear mandate for change, and that all the people need to accept that. That's a mandate for change. The people have spoken, and that's what they want.
For sure. This is a mandate, Brian. This is a mandate based on love of country, not love of self-identity. This is historic. This is game-changing. Trump's got a mandate.
A mandate. He didn't just win the Electoral College, but as well.
Make no mistake, Donald Trump has a massive mandate. The mandate now, I mean, this was not a small victory.
The American people's voices were heard. There's a mandate.
So those voices that you heard was Jesse Watters. It was a person in a diner. So that's why you may not have recognized the man with the Southern accent. And then we move on to Pete Hegseth. And then we had Lawrence Jones briefly. We go back to Jesse Watters. And then that was Tulsi Gabbard, my favorite. I'm being sarcastic when I say that. I can't stand that woman. Okay, so phony baloney. And I called it in 2016 that she was going to change parties. And I was right. I got in fights about her. I got like knocked down, drag out, like discussions online with people I know who were like, you just don't understand her, Juliet. She's anti-war. I'm like, she's a phony baloney. She backs Assad. She's a hack. I can't stand her. It was bad. Anyway, and now I'm like vindicated. But anyway, but not in a good way. Not in a good way. But yes, that is sort of the theme. I love how they say mandate now. We have to just accept this mandate. But in 2020, oh no, he didn't win. You know, the election was rigged. We somehow didn't win. And they wouldn't shut up about it they still don't shut up about it. But now we're supposed to immediately just go, yep, you got a mandate. Let's go. You know, we'll just steamroll us, go right over us. We don't care. Oh, heck no. That's not going to happen. So that is sort of, I wanted to make that montage because I kept hearing these themes and I thought there's no other way to do it. We're just going to have to put them all together. So next up, this is my favorite clip that I created last week because this is based off of, before I play it, one episode, just 1 hour from Fox and Friends. This all happened in the same hour the day after the election. The day after the election, Fox and Friends had dual breakfast with friends, that meaning they sent out reporters to 2 different diners, one in Pennsylvania, one in North Carolina, with microphones to talk to Fox fanatics about the election. So double breakfast with friends. And that's why I captured all 3 hours, because they tend to do that after a midterm or after an election or after a big day. And I like the breakfast with friends segments because I can get good clips out of it. Now this one, I noticed a theme, again, just in the 1 hour, and I went back and re-edited this clip. You'll catch it right away. This is one of the things that the Democratic Party is up against that is very, very difficult to battle, and you'll hear it immediately. Here we go.
Truly voted the Bible and my convictions. I am so thankful for local pastors that were willing to stand up and really explain that there is no separation of church and state, and that as believers we have an obligation to vote for our children and grandchildren moving forward.
So they're saying the reason they chose Trump, I think God spared his life for a purpose, and this is
people.
You're right, and God spared his life for a reason.
Who doesn't believe in miracles?
Right. It's amazing.
God is not done with America.
What he has been up against and survived is incredible.
Right. And it's a great day. Trump won, and God is in control.
Such good people, Carly, aren't they? God-fearing people.
We thank God for saving his life.
Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason. And that reason was to save our country and to restore America to greatness.
So yes, we're up against a cult. A cult. And this is something that I've been worried about pretty much since he said he was going to run again. This is a very difficult thing to navigate. I think Democrats have been beating themselves up since the election, and I get it. I understand. Nothing's perfect. There were mistakes that were made all over the place. It's normal. It's what happens in every election, win or lose. There's missteps and mistakes that happen. It's difficult to gauge where the public is. But when you're dealing with something like this, when you're dealing with people who literally think this man is like divine, or that divine intervention has kept him going, and that's why he survived the 2 assassination attempts, although the second one wasn't really much of anything. But yeah, we're dealing with an irrational situation, and this is very difficult to navigate. Weirdly, Harris did the best. One of the demographics that she did phenomenal in were non-believers, so people who aren't religious. And I would put myself in that category. And that category is growing, actually, in the United States. Regardless of how you feel about religion, people who don't identify with a specific religion is growing. So, but yeah, we're dealing with a cult, and a cult is difficult. And the first woman is very disturbing what she says. My pastor said there's no difference between, there's no separation. The separation of church and state is not a thing. And that's technically, he's not supposed to be doing that. You're not supposed to go on a pulpit of a tax-exempt religious organization and tell people how to vote. You're not supposed to do that. They do it, but you're not supposed to, because that's why they get taxed. Anyway, that's a whole other thing, but just so disappointing. And I don't mean any disrespect to religious people. Of course, you know, most of my family is devoutly Catholic or somewhat Catholic, depending. But when you start turning human beings who are deeply flawed, any human being, and you start putting them on these pedestals, dangerous things happen. So I'm just not a fan. I'm not a fan of worshiping any human being. I don't care who it is. Everybody's going to let you down. Everybody's got faults and flaws. So this type of stuff scares the heck out of me. Next up, we have the Trump alternative reality. Now, this is Jesse Waters. This is also the day. A lot of these clips are from the day after the election. And this is kind of an awful monologue, but I needed to share it to kind of show, again, what we're up against. You need to know your enemy. You need to know them backwards and forwards. You need to know how they think and how they're spreading their nonsense. And this is an excerpt from a monologue. The monologue was actually much larger, but I found that there was a lot of creepiness in this little section. So again, here we go. Jesse Waters sort of explaining why he thinks Trump won.
The answer is simple. They lied to you, but Trump listened to you. They told you the border was secure, the economy was humming, and Joe Biden was an Olympic athlete, even though he couldn't stop falling down and forgetting his own name. If you had a problem with that, they censored you. And when they started losing, they called you fascist garbage who just needed a smack in the ass. The last 4 years, we witnessed the Democrats go crazy. They loaded illegals into airplanes and flew them here. They emptied jails, made up genders, handed out free sex changes, and printed money like Zimbabwe. We all watched it happen. We didn't like it. Trump listened, said, I hear you, I get it, I'll fix it. It's not that complicated. We kept the faith in the face of last-minute hoaxes. Remember, Kamala was going to win Iowa. A comedian made a joke about Puerto Rico. Oh, my God, it's over. Trump's tariffs are going to wreck the economy. Really? Because the market today had its best day in 2 years. Trump did better with Puerto Ricans and beat her by 13 in Iowa. The American people don't like being lied to. Trump even did better with women than Kamala did with men. Imagine that. Wives didn't have to lie to their husbands. The so-called racist dictator shattered records with blacks, Hispanics, Jews, and college students. His margin in Springfield, Ohio, where they're definitely not eating the pets, went up. Trump, Mr. Muslim Ban, won Muslims in Dearborn, Michigan. The guy who they said hated Hispanics won Miami-Dade County. That's the first time a Republican pulled that off since Reagan.
So yes, the full monologue was much longer and more ridiculous. And it's basically just them. But again, I play that to sort of, this is what we're up against. This is how they talk to their audience. It's all hyped up. It's all exaggerated. It's all over the top. And anyone to say that we're lying and Trump is telling the truth, which that came up later, people would say, well, Trump's the truth and the Democrats lie, is like completely backward. Because if you watch one of his rallies, it's just lie upon lie upon lie upon lie upon lie upon lie upon lie. And he lies so quickly, it's almost difficult to even catch up. It's why he's so difficult to fact check, because it's exhausting. It's like you go, I can't do this. I just can't. Because he'll tell 3 or 4 lies in like a very brief statement. Like, I had the greatest economy in the history of this country, and I cut regulations more than anybody else, and I haven't had a war in 74 years, and I was the first president to do that, and blah, 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 blah. And it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And you're like, where are you going? Can't keep up. And the thing that's really creepy about Trump, having watched his rallies, is he'll say stuff like, especially in the last few months, he would just turn to a crowd and say, all of your problems will go away. All of your fears, everything that's troubling will all be relaxed. Everything will be great. I mean, just impossible things to deliver on. All of your problems will go away? Really? All of them? Because you're president? All of my problems will go away. Okay, then. But it's like a preacher almost. It reminds me of, very briefly before we move on to the next one, Trump reminds me of Jim Bakker. Jim Bakker was a televangelist who basically got busted in a scheme where he was selling shares of a property, and he was like overselling it. It was this new development that he was going to make. It was sort of like a resort or apartment complex. It doesn't really matter. But he was massively overselling it to just bilk people of money. He got busted. He went to prison. He did his time. It's clear that he did it, right? He gets out of prison. He starts up a new ministry. No problem. And it's like, what? What's going on here? I don't understand this about humanity. That people will just fall for it again. It doesn't matter how bad it gets. It's mind-blowing to me. That's Trump. Trump is one of those people. So this next clip is very dark. It's from Friday on the 5. This is Jesse Waters making a quip about mass deportations. Here we go.
You're going to have cameras out there making sure that they capture the images of ICE coming along and taking these people away. And they deserve to be taken away. Sometimes you have to do tough stuff. But AOC is going to be there tying herself to migrants. It's going to be hysterical. But sometimes dad has to do the tough thing. Doesn't make it always look great, but it's the right thing to do. And that's what we expect.
I think what's probably going to happen, and I'm not the only person who thinks this, is that Trump is going to overreach, and his cabal of horrible people are going to overreach, and people are going to see actual images of families being ripped apart, of like grandmothers and grandfathers and parents of small children being ripped apart and sent back to Mexico or sent back wherever. And it's not going to be pretty. And people are going to know people who get deported, and people are going to have neighbors that get deported. And if they actually do this, and I think they will try, because Tom Homan is the one that's in charge of it, and he's he's a dark character. He's the one that came up with the family separation policy, where they took little kids away from their parents and put them in detention separately to deter people from crossing the border. That's what they openly said it. It's completely twisted and evil. That's who's running this again. And now they're determined. We're going to really do this mass deportation. So just envision that. I do think this will be their downfall. I could be wrong. I don't know. It's hard to know anymore. This next clip I pulled from PBS. And the reason why I pulled it is this is Amnia Navas interviewing Representative Salazar, Maria Salazar from Florida, who talks about, she asks her some pretty tough questions, and Salazar seems to be in complete denial of what's about to happen. So this is from the day after the election, like a lot of these clips, like I said, the PBS NewsHour.
Congresswoman, we should also note that he has proposed mass deportations of undocumented people starting on day one of his presidency. There's an estimated 198,000 undocumented people in Miami-Dade County in your district. What would the sudden arrest and deportation of nearly 200,000 people mean for your community?
And I love what you're asking me. You know, I wrote the Dignity Act, which is one of the only comprehensive or complete immigration reform law. So I understand exactly what you're telling me about immigration. But the problem, and I need to put this into context, when you have a Biden administration that opens the southern border for 4 years and allows 10 million people to come in, and out of those 10 million, 2 are gutaways, and out of those 10 million, you have this group called Transgender from Venezuela, which is a transnational criminal organization.
Congresswoman, if I may, I know our time here is limited. I'm asking about the potential deportation of hundreds of thousands of people from your community.
The deportation is going to be among those criminals who are the gang members, the gutaways, the Transgender. I am sure.
Not all 200,000 undocumented in your community. Is that what you're saying?
I am sure that that the Trump administration is not going to be targeting those people who have been here for more than 5 years, that have American kids, that don't have criminal records, that have been working in the economy and paying taxes. I am sure that they're going to hone in on the criminals who arrived less than 4 years ago. Because I wrote the Dignity Act, and I am the first one who understands that you have to give some type of dignity to those who have been here for more than 5 years, people who have roots in the country, not people who are coming to commit crimes.
If I can just clarify from you, have you received those kinds of details from anyone in a potential Trump administration? Because so far what we've heard is a proposal for mass deportations. You have about 30 seconds left. Have you gotten those assurances?
Mass deportation to those who are committing crimes who have been here for less than 5 years. You understand that you have millions of undocumented who are contributing with the economy and are helping our country to be a better one.
So I have to correct something that Representative Salazar said in that quick clip. She's referencing the Dignity Act, which she referred to as, she said, I wrote the most comprehensive immigration reform law. She did not write a law because the law, the Dignity Act, is still a bill and it's still sitting in committee. It has not, this is what happened. So the bill that she's referencing is actually called H.R. 3599. There's a hyperlink in the newsletter. It's actually called the DIGNIDAD, and then in parentheses, Dignity Act of 2023. It was introduced in the 118th Congress in May 2023. The bill was referred to the Subcommittee on Border Security and Enforcement, but did not progress further in the process to become a law. You can look up any bill. The likelihood of a bill turning into a law is incredibly low in the United States. Now, it depends on the Congress. That basically success rate varies from Congress to Congress. It's usually in the single digits of percentages. So you're talking about like 4% of bills go from a bill to a law. So writing a bill is great, but that doesn't mean anything in terms of it becoming law, because like 96% of them don't become laws. It's staggering how little actually gets all the way to the process of the president signing something into law. So anyway, so that's very briefly. Also, just want to say before I cut for a quick brief statement from my sponsor. I'm laughing. Anyway, Trump has not specified, oh, I'm only going to deport people who've been here for less than 5 years, or I'm only going to deport criminals. I'm sure that ICE will go after people they think are criminals or committing criminal acts, of course. Why not? Why wouldn't they do that? They're already doing that. They've been doing that for the past 4 years. That's what they do. But the idea that they're going to, oh, no, you've been here for 5 years, you can stay. Why would he say that? He said he's against amnesty. He said he's going to deport millions of people. He's blatantly lied about the number of people who've entered the country during the Biden administration. That number has jumped anywhere from 10 million to 15 million to 20 million to 21 million. In fact, he's changed the number in the same speech. I've seen him say, for whatever reason, he's been doing this. He'll say 15 million, later he'll say 20 million. Or he'll say 20 million, later he'll say 21 million. He can't keep his numbers straight. That's how often he lies. So anyway, before we get into the next, because we're going to be switching gears in the next clip anyway, I should give a quick shout out to my sponsor. And that sponsor would be, if you listen to this podcast on a regular basis, you know, it's the listeners of this podcast and the readers of my newsletter. That's right. I'm the real deal, 100%. Supported by everyday people who just support Decoding Fox News. There's no large donor. There's no large sponsor. There's no advertiser. There's no rich parent. There's no trust fund. My dad was an auto mechanic. It's hundreds of people deciding that they want to make Decoding Fox News a thing. If you'd like to become a paid supporter of Decoding Fox News, you get access to exclusive material, which changes from week to week. You can go to my Patreon for Decoding Fox News. I have different levels there. You can go to Substack for Decoding Fox News. Subscriptions start at $5 a month or $55 for the year, and there's also a founding member. There's also on my Twitter bio, which I'm going to be moving that soon because people are fleeing Twitter, also known as X, in droves. You can find me at Blue Sky and Threads as well. There's a little linked tree that includes the Venmo that's associated with Decoding Fox News, and some people have donated that way. And it's always appreciated. If you can't afford to donate, totally understand. You can just share the podcast, share the newsletter. It's always very, very, very helpful. People have offered to help with this project, which is a little weird for me because I honestly think you need to be a trained journalist to do some of this work that I do because it's very specific. So I'll get back to you guys when I can. I haven't been able to get back to anybody yet. But what's better for me, honestly, is just promotion. The more you talk about this, the more you tell your friends, the more you post it on social media, that's better for me than anything else that you could possibly do for Decoding Fox News. Now, next up, we have drag queens and the non-threat of transgender athletes. We're going to start with the day after the election again. This is the 5, everybody's favorite, Judge Janine.
And, you know, Americans didn't feel at home in America. They were told that we have to have drag queen story hour for your children in school. And they were told that, you know, if your kids want to transition, you know, we don't really have to tell you about that.
So it's kind of amazing that right-wing media always goes after the most marginalized group in any society and blames them for everything, which is what they're doing with transgender people right now. And I also want to preface that drag queens, that's not new. Oh, why? Hey, there's this guy named William Shakespeare who wrote plays where men played all the parts, and he often in his plays included cross-dressing people, men, like confusing because they were all played by men, but men who would dress up as women for various reasons, and men have been dressing up as women as like a joke or to be funny or to, you know, whatever for a very long, probably from the beginning of time. So this idea that like, oh my God, oh, we can't have a drag queen. It'll freak people out. Like, are you kidding? Are you kidding? Oh my goodness. Anyway, I can't. Now, that's a pretty lighthearted one. This next one gets really, really ugly. And I'm surprised nobody else clipped this. I debated clipping this and I went ahead and clipped it today. And I was just, yikes. This is Greg Gutfeld just going straight up crazy, evil, nasty against transgender people. Here's the clip.
You could have listened to us. We were talking about this. I was talking about the trans issue for the last, I don't know how many years, 5 years. I was called transphobic. I was called bigoted. But every day I talked about it because I felt it was the most, and I'll tell you why it was the most important issue in a minute. But Scarborough only talked about it as a political issue. He was mad that they were doing it because it didn't play well in politics. He didn't talk about the parents or the families destroyed or the doctors who should be executed for butchering children in order to make a buck. We talked about on this show. This is the biggest moral story probably since abortion, because it shows you how a toxic ideology can grow exponentially if it's left unchallenged. Suddenly, we were voluntarily butchering children. Again, a crime that would end in the death of a doctor. You know, now we were talking about it was a choice among children who cannot even make these decisions. Think about Elon Musk. You know, he has an estranged transgender child. He knows what wokeism has done. It took one of his kids from him, and that radicalized Musk.
So I don't know if Musk's particular family situation is what made him radical. We know that that definitely pushed him over an edge, but he also seems to have a serious problem with racism, which that would have not had anything to do with his daughter. So, you know, I don't want to get it. I don't want to psychoanalyze Elon Musk. I'm completely sick of that man. It's a terrifying situation we're in right now with him. But anyway, I want to point some things out. Now, Gutfeld basically said that, you know, he said that, oh, if you allow a toxic ideology can grow exponentially if left unchallenged. And he referred to abortion. Abortion did not start after Roe v. Wade was passed in 1973. The first written references to the practice of abortion were found on ancient Egyptian papyrus written about 3,500 years ago. There's also archaeological evidence that it happened much, much earlier than that. There are many reasons for this. Christopher Columbus talked about it when he came to Hispaniola. In his journals, he wrote about women practicing abortion, and it was usually when things got very desperate and they already had kids to take care of, and they thought, I can't have this new baby. So early in the pregnancy, there was things that they would do that would cause a miscarriage. Basically an old-fashioned, old-school abortion. However you want to call it. But these aren't new, and it's not that it was an ideology. In fact, there's evidence that proves that a practice that happened for hundreds of years without question became sinister when women started to get more rights. There was this pushback of like, oh, no, we can't let these women get out of hand. And suddenly something that wasn't even an issue, which was early term abortion, became this sinister thing that twisted. There's a lot of evidence on this. There's a lot of research on it. But regardless, abortion providers have also faced violence. So he just called for the execution of doctors who work in gender-affirming care. He called for it twice in a brief little rant there. So abortion providers have faced violence. So according to reporting by the Southern Poverty Law Center, since 1977, when the National Abortion Federation first began gathering statistics on anti-abortion violence, anti-abortion activists have committed 11 murders, 42 bombings, 200 acts of arson, and 531 assaults, all of which were directed at patients and those working in abortion care. I cannot read Gutfeld's mind or know his exact intentions, but comparing abortion with gender-affirming care while also calling for violence against healthcare providers is extremely reckless and dangerous. I don't want to get too much into that for legal liability purposes because, again, I can't read his mind. I don't know what his intentions are. If you ever wonder why journalists speak in these kind of weak verb ways, I've talked about this all the time. When we say it looks like, it's supposed, it might be, it appears, we do that because we don't want to get sued. If we don't know something 100%, we don't say it. That's how we're supposed to do it, unlike Fox. So, and Fox gets sued and loses those lawsuits, so, or at least settles. So, great example. So that's why we use weak language and we kind of dance around something without you saying something declarative or definitive. There's a good reason for that. So this next clip is also about transgender athletes. This is Judge Janine kind of destroying her own argument. Here we go. And this is from Thursday.
Forget your dreams. And we're going to put men in women's sports. And you know what I asked my producer and I, Roman, we were sitting there trying to figure out, why would the Democrat Party do this to young girls? And it was like 1.1% of the population is transgender. And of that number, less than 100 are in the NCAA. And yet what they wanted to do was destroy every young girl's dreams.
Okay, that last line was just humorous to me. Every little girl's dreams, because I was a horribly unathletic kid. Horribly unathletic, like embarrassingly bad. Like, gym teachers would point me out and laugh at me in front of the rest of the class. Like, what? And I always thought when I was a little kid, like, if this was a reading class and I was struggling with reading, you wouldn't do that, would you? Right? You just think that, like, mocking me is going to make me more coordinated or better. Like, because I was, like, extreme in the other things. Like, I could read stuff. I could read before I went to kindergarten. I was, like, on top of my academics. But they put me in a gym class, and it was just like, I want to die. It was so bad. Anyway, bad. Like, wow. Like, are you doing that on purpose? Yes, I'm really, really, really bad at sports. Anyway, yikes. So I looked up some of this information, because she says it's 1.1% of the population is transgender, and she said less than 100 are in the NCAA. So I looked it up. The last information I could get, the most recent, was from 2021 to 2022. And according to the NCAA, and this is from their website, roughly 226,000 student athletes competed in women's championship sports. I'm going to be real generous and say under 100 is 99. So using the number 99 in the NCAA of transgender women, that would account for approximately 0.04%. So that's 0.04% of all competitive student athletes. So that is a tiny, tiny number. It's not 1%. It's not 0.4%. It's 0.01%. So this is just tiny. And the NCAA also has a set of standards that include testosterone suppression medication for transgender women. So they don't just say, oh, okay, you say you're transgender, go ahead, compete. It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. So I have a couple bonus clips that aren't in the newsletter, that are only in the podcast, because they're just weird. And this is Dana Loesch, formerly the NRA spokesperson. She appeared on Jesse Waters on Thursday, and she just said a couple crazy things, and I'm including them because we have the time. So here we go.
She's very good. She can be she's completely fair. I love how they love the election results when Biden's not running. Now, all of a sudden, because Kamala lost, and let's be real, that's why he was smiling so big today when he spoke. Yep. Now that she's lost, oh, it's a free and fair election. It's all good, folks. Nothing to see here. He can smile. Jill can wear red when she goes and votes. No hidden messages there. We all get it. It all makes sense to us now.
But what makes sense to us now? I watched that. I'm just like, what are you talking about? Because Jill Biden wore red when she went to vote. So that was some hidden message. And the fact that we're not angry about the election results means there was something up. What's up? You people literally lied for 4 years, insisting that that lunatic won the 2020 election when he did not. And I can't with this craziness. Now here's the last Dana Loesch clip, which again is a head scratcher of sorts. Here we go.
Nationally syndicated radio host Dana Lash joins us now. All right, men are crying and the crowds are clapping. What is happening?
Oh my gosh, Jesse, I just inject it into my veins. I'm laughing so hard because these women, Trump also, you forgot one other achievement. Trump also made all these chicks who've been screaming about abortions, Jesse, he made them discover modesty. So he made all of these third and fourth wave feminists discover modesty. So they're actually going to act like ladies, and they're not going to be out there screwing everything that walks, and they're not going to need 24/7 taxpayer funded abortion all the way up till the moment of birth. So congratulations. He's got another thing that he's not getting credit for.
So do you have any idea what she's talking about? Because I don't, and I watched the whole clip live, and I just went, what are you talking about? Are you okay? Are you okay, Dana Loesch? I am confused at what? Okay. Anyway, the next up, we have stories Fox News ignored. And this is very short because everything was election on both networks. So there's not much to go over, but there's a few. But very briefly, because I haven't done it in a while, and I'm very tired. But I'll do it very quickly for you guys because I know you like it. I'm Judge Janine, and I'm just here to say that I'm tired. I'm tired of being angry all the time, which I am. I'm angry right now. I'm angry at Greg Gutfeld. I'm angry at Jesse Waters. And I'm not angry at my dogs. I love my dog, Stella. I love you, Stella. You're the best dog in the world. I got other dogs, but Stella, I love Stella. Anyway, and I love my Oreo cookies. And I love my York peppermint patties. And I'm telling you, just shut up or I'm going to throw this pen. You know what? Maybe Trump will make me, I don't know, not Attorney General, but he'll make me his personal lawyer. And that way I can stand around him and say, Alina Habba, you're a fool. Okay, anyway, just, that would be kind of funny to watch Judge Janine with Alina Habba. Because I don't think that would go well. I don't. Even though they're both on the same team. I have a feeling. Anyway, moving on to stories Fox News ignored. Every week I compare the hours I've watched on Fox to 5 hours of the PBS NewsHour. The following list are stories that PBS covered that Fox News did not. Starting with climate disasters. After catastrophic flash floods devastated the Spanish province of Valencia, the government pledged $11 billion to help victims recover. Local authorities have said that they will need as much as $34 billion. At least 211 people were killed during the disaster. Rafael, a Category 3 hurricane, slammed into Cuba last week, knocking out the power grid for 24 hours. The island has struggled with maintaining its power grid for weeks due to storms and an ongoing economic crisis. Japan's Mount Fuji finally regained its signature snow cap, more than a month after it normally would, after setting a record for the most delayed snowfall in 130 years. Record air pollution in Lahore, Pakistan's second largest city, hospitalized hundreds while officials shut down schools and workplaces. Last Thursday, Lahore had the worst air quality of any city in the world, according to IQ Air, a Swiss air quality monitoring company. Updates in the Israel-Hamas war. Rescue crews pulled out 30 bodies from a residential building in central Lebanon that was hit by an Israeli airstrike. Hezbollah has fired rockets at northern Israel since soon after the Hamas attack on October 7th. Israel has launched a massive aerial bombardment and ground invasion in Lebanon since mid-September. Lebanon filed a complaint against Israel at the UN's labor organization over a string of deadly attacks involving exploding pagers, the targeted members of Hezbollah. Israel has not denied or confirmed involvement for the attack, which killed at least 37 people. According to a new UN Human Rights Office report, around 70% of the deaths in Gaza since the start of the conflict with Israel are women and children. UN Human Rights Chief Volker Turk said that the report showed that civilian casualties were a direct consequence of the failure to comply with fundamental principles of international humanitarian law, namely the principles of distinction, proportionality, and precautions in attack. Updates to the war in Ukraine. Ukrainian troops fought with Northern Korean troops for the first time. Ukraine says that an estimated 11,000 North Korean soldiers were in the Kursk border region, where Ukraine troops have a foothold. At a recent summit of European leaders, they braced for a future that is less reliant on support from the United States. Concerns arose over the U.S. continued support of Ukraine and commitment to NATO. Moving on, voters in Moldova narrowly re-elected Mia Sandu on her second term as president. The Russian government attempted to thwart her re-election in a series of campaign interferences. Sandu has a mandate to integrate Moldova into the European Union. Workers at Boeing accepted a contract after 53 days on strike. The troubled company faces a number of challenges as it works to regain public confidence and profitability. Drivers for ride-sharing apps such as Uber and Lyft won the right to unionize in Massachusetts after voters passed a first-of-a-kind ballot referendum backed by national labor groups. The FBI is investigating a series of racist text messages sent to Black Americans. The texts, which started showing up the day after the presidential election, were sent to phones in 13 states. In Ohio, Adam Coy, a white former police officer, was convicted of murder for the killing of Andre Hill, an unarmed black man. Hill was walking out of a garage Coy believed was being burglarized. Hill was a guest of the homeowner. During the trial, Coy say he mistakenly thought a set of keys in Hill's right hand was a silver revolver. The Supreme Court will hear a case involving the redistricting of a mostly black congressional district in Louisiana. If the new district is formed, it could help give Democrats another seat in the House of Representatives. The Australian government has plans to ban social media use for anyone under the age of 16. The legislation will be introduced into Parliament this year and would go into effect in 12 months if approved by lawmakers. That's the stories. There wasn't that many of them, like I said, because everything was election, election, election. So by the numbers, which is the top 5 stories on Fox compared to the top 5 topics on PBS NewsHour, starting with Fox. Blatant promotion of Trump was 46%, 17%. Democrats in disarray is what I named that category because it was all about Democrats freaking out. Kamala bashing, they're still at it, don't know why, 13%. Biden bashing, that's a new thing again, 5%. And they mentioned that there were also congressional races, 4%. PBS NewsHour, now I just put all of the, because they did congressional elections, they did all of them. So I just called it one category on PBS because that's how they did it. So the 2024 election was 61% of their news, not surprising. Artist profile, which is a regular segment, 6%. Reactions to Trump's election, 4%. The role of RFK Jr. in the next Trump administration, they did a whole segment on that, 4%. And extreme weather, and the extreme weather events all over the world, was 3%. Words used on Fox for the week ending November 10th, 2024. Trump, 856. Kamala, 246. Democrats, 235. Biden, 231. Women, 111. Border, 76. Economy, 71. Black, as in black voters, black men, 67. Israel, 60. Latino, 57. Crime, 49. Inflation, 28. Woke, 22. Deportation, only 21. Landslide, 19. Ukraine, 8. China, 6. AOC, 4. And young voters, 4. And that's everything. I'm really tired. I'm going to say that again. I'm really tired. I'm very much in a laughing to keep but crying phase of this situation post election. I just don't know how else to function. It's a dark day. It's a dark day for this country. I just hope that the system prevents the worst abuses, the checks and balances in our government. We'll see. I don't know. I'm going to keep fighting. Like I said, I'm not stopping. I'm going to stop for a couple of days, but I'm still very much keep fighting. I'm excited about what I'm going to be able to offer you next week. Instead of sludging through the 15 hours of Fox that I normally do, I'm going to just focus on some people who have been proposed as possible cabinet positions and go through my archives and see some examples of stuff about them. So thank you so much for listening. You can always check out my work at Twitter, although Twitter is dying very quickly, also known as X, Blue Sky, which is blown up for me. Threads, Instagram, TikTok, not so much, YouTube, and Facebook. I have a fan page. And also, if you'd like to become a paid subscriber, I could always use the support at Decoding Fox News Substack, my Decoding Fox News for Patreon, and then again, there's a linked tree on my bio. I'm going to try to put that in all my bios that can take you to my Venmo if you want to do it that way as well. And the podcast mascots, Odin and Thor, send their love. They have been fabulous through all of this. My best friends. They are my emotional support animals in every way, shape, and form. And you can also find a version of this podcast on the Resolute Square YouTube channel. Thank you so much for listening. We're going to be in for a bumpy ride. I believe in this country. I believe in my listeners. I believe in my readers. We're going to get through this as best we can. Thank you so much, and we'll see you at the next podcast.
Resolute Square.